What up? This is Evil Squeegee, and this series is, I don't know what I'm calling it yet. I don't need a name, I just need to go. The idea here is that we play this podcast on every Friday at 1 p.m. EST on twitch.tv/Dio the Yarn Dragon, where I run a one-on-one game playtesting Arcworld in the world of Kularia for Dio. And those sessions last 3 hours long. And if there's one thing I know, it's that sometimes you miss a session, or sometimes you just don't have the energy to sink, or the time to sink into a full 3 hour long episode of the show, and you'd like to catch up and get right into the heat of it with the players and watch the show live. Or maybe just watch the most recent episode and see if it's for you. And that's what this series is supposed to help out with. This is where we're going to take each episode of the 3 hour long podcast and condense it down into a session recap of like maybe 5 or 10 minutes an episode at most. I'm going for the shorter the better here. And yeah, so that's about what I've got here. I'm not going to ramble on any longer. I'm going to get right to it. So if you're not familiar with what the purpose of a Session Zero is, it's where you sit down and you share your world, you get the players' input on character ideas, and you talk about lines and veils and player boundaries and what they can expect from the game and what they want to get from the game and things like that. And so we started this episode with a recap of the basic setting information. I'll go through that now. In the Age of the Void, there were only 3. The siblings. There was Aktash, goddess of the elements and nature, who developed angels and demons. They were also the goddess of weather, animals, elements, disease, life, and love. It was Molech Ga, goddess of creation and refinement, and who developed the elves. And they also happened to develop science, culture, history, academia, and alchemy. Then there was Ganax, goddess of death and the afterlife, who developed the humans, and they were also the goddess of magic, ancestors, destruction, and chaos. The 3 breathe life into the world, creating all that is, calling the world and the universe Balain, and with that comes the mortal plane, heaven, and hell as the 3 major spheres of existence. Heaven is home to the angels, hell is home to the demons, and the mortal plane is home to the humans and the elves. Heaven and hell are locked in an eternal conflict, with the mortal plane being caught in the middle. We then moved on to the Golden Age, where elves and humans are kind of getting along, caught in the crossfire of this great war between heaven and hell. The kingdoms of Balain mostly side with heaven, is where the mortals and the elves tended to get along with heaven the most. And so hell was really hard-pressed to fight and destroy as much as they could. So heaven has this very defensive and very righteous reputation amongst the mortals, and demons have this very destructive and very aggressive reputation amongst the mortals. And then the Golden Age ends when the elves vanish into thin air. Like, nobody knows what happens to them. They all just vanished instantly. The entire race just gone. And at that same time, the battles between heaven and hell stopped happening on the mortal plane, and nobody knows why. Angels and demons can be summoned, but they have to be summoned. They can't just intrude into the mortal plane on their own anymore, and nobody's certain why that is. And that was the end of the Golden Age. Which brings us to the Age of Humanity, which is the current age that Kularia finds itself in. The kingdom of Kularia, where the campaign is going to be taking place, is ruled over by a king who has 2 twin sons, and that'll be important later. The people who live in Kularia are divided into 2 groups. There's the Highborn and the Lowborn. The Highborn are the nobles, which are divided into 3 houses. There's House Aktasha, known for its affinity with all things natural. House Molech Gana, known for its alchemists and historians. House Ganaxia, known for its magicians. And anybody not born of a house is a Lowborn, also called commoner. Now, this is part of the political structure of the kingdom. You might be from one dukedom or another dukedom, but if you're from the same house, you have a connection. There's that sense of family, even if you're not related by blood. And so house members really look out for each other in between the lines of all the political goings-on. There was also mentioned the Vigil, which is an order of wandering paladins, a loose brotherhood that kind of doesn't really have a hierarchy. They just have an association, and they spend their time hunting down demons, cultists, and demonic influence to banish it from the mortal plane. They serve heaven. There are 7 duchies, or dukedoms. I'm not going to get into all of them right now. In the episode, we actually talked a little bit about them. each, but I'm not going to get into any of those details now. That'll come up in the podcast later when we actually go to or talk about those duchies in the play. But the dukes, duchesses, and duchesses are all appointed by the king from the highborn houses to rule over the duchies. And then you have, the counts rule over the counties underneath the duchies, and the barons manage the counts, and so on, and so on, and so on. You have, then there's the royal agency, which is one part IRS, one part FBI, and one part bank. They handle taxes, cross-duchy situations, legally speaking, and they manage the bank. Now, the bank is basically, there's one big bank in the capital, in Amberfall is the name of the city. And you basically pay them for storage space in the bank. And then in each of the major cities, the royal agency provides portals to the bank that you can put your stuff into and out of. Then we can talk about a little bit about the church. The church is led by a high priest who serves as the leader of the archbishops. The archbishops and the church and the high priest don't really serve at a specific church. They are part of the hierarchical power structure that is the church. Each duchy is assigned a bishop who manages the pastors, priests, and deacons of each church. The church worships the three, or as we're going to get into a little bit later, the two, and claims to be neutral in the war, which we'll talk about in a little bit, even though neutrality is impossible at an individual level eventually. They work miracles for the people and tend to the people's needs. The church is a very altruistic and very generous organization. And, they do, like, charity drives, and they look after the common folk. And so there's a lot of goodwill towards the church within the setting. Now, the church does not follow the laws of the kingdom. It's not that they're lawbreakers. It's that they have their own laws. And the king doesn't rule over the church. The high priest does. And so you could be a wanted person inside of a community and go to the church and claim sanctuary, and if the church decides to protect you there, then there's nothing the law can do to grab you because the church is in charge now. We talked a little bit about the Arcane Circle, which is the Arcane Circle is a very prestigious organization. The High Council, the Mystic Council, and the Archmage head it up and kind of run things. It is a combination of political force and mystical authority, as well as like a magical college or a magical school that you might go to. If you are among the best of the best, and if you're among the most talented, they will bring you in, and they jealously guard their collections of tomes and their access to magical training and knowledge. And so to be trained by the Arcane Circle is a really big deal. It's a big deal to be trained by the Arcane Circle, and it's also a really big deal to be a member of House Ganaxia, which is the house that named itself after the god of humans, death, and magic. The Arcane Circle supplies court wizards to the various duchies throughout the kingdom. Duchies? Duchies throughout the kingdom. And it is on the court wizards' responsibility, it's on their shoulders to both serve the duke, duchess, or duchess that they have been assigned to in terms of all things magical advisement or magical services, but also they're there to help further the political goals of the Arcane Circle within the dukedom that they've been assigned to. Then there's the Thieves Guild, which makes up the primary organized crime in the kingdom. They have a strict no-murder policy, but will frame people for jail-worthy crimes to remove them if need be. They have information brokers that act as the buffers between them and the rest of the world. Now, brokers are not doing anything illegal, and they're never really given the information they would need to be flipped. Like, if they were arrested by the law, and, you try and flip the broker to get the higher-ups inside the Thieves Guild, that doesn't really work. Because the broker's job is to gather information and know as much as they can and feed that information and funnel it into the guild for jobs that the guild will then take on. And so if you need to hire the Thieves Guild to, say, hit a rival merchant or something, you go to the broker. And the broker, of course, takes a huge cut of any fees that they charge you in hiring out the guild services. And then finally, there's the Bloodbound. The Bloodbound are a secret, supernaturally empowered professional organization of assassins. Summoning them for contact requires a mystical ritual, and they use their own blood magic to bind themselves to the plane of shadow, making them superhuman. They are some seriously ninja dudes, and they do seriously ninja dude stuff. And that was all of the core setting information, with the exception of some recent events. We talked a little about the war. The king was recently killed by what is publicly believed to be a House Ganaxia assassin. Nobody can prove it was House Ganaxia, but pretty much everybody thinks that's who's there to blame. The war breaks out when his two twin sons start fighting a war of succession because they're twins. There's not really an older brother. I mean, technically speaking, there's an older brother, but the king had a favorite, and it wasn't the one who would have technically been the inherit to inherit the throne. And so a war is broken out. Prince Jurek of the Iron Crown, who, if he wins the war, he's going to do away with the highborn-lowborn divide, and he's going to abolish the houses, but he's also going to stamp out the worship of Ganax in vengeance for his father's death, and he leads the Iron Army. Then there's Prince Bo, who defends the freedom of religion and traditions of the people, including the class divide, so that's the traditionalist army. The war has left a lot of people in dire straits, and so banditry has become really common on the roads, and the roads are really dangerous to travel, which leads to a lot of work for adventurers. And that was all of the setting information that we had talked about. And then we got into character creation. Now, I'm not going to go into the character creation system, but we did talk a lot about who makes what it is that makes Paisley. Paisley is the name of the character that Dio made. Dio made Paisley McKenna de Aktasha, a highborn ranger from House Aktasha. Who believes that the war is inevitable, but she can relieve the suffering of those caught in its crossfire. Her fulfillment, the thing that she really wants emotionally, is friendship. She really wants to make friends. And she believes, now she believes this, and this is a lie. Dio chose this lie. I did not choose this lie. She believes that everybody has good in them, and when a player takes a lie, they're handing it to the GM, and they're saying, this is a lie, my character believes it, and I want you to prove it wrong to my character so I can go through a character arc, and we can get some character development out of that, and have some conflict go down around that. So basically what Dio has done here is she's chosen to tell me, the GM, that I need to have irredeemable bad guys, and there have to be irredeemable people who do not have good in them to challenge her belief, so that eventually that belief in this lie can shatter and she can grow as a character. She's a ranger. Her flaw is curiosity, and she's a broody character. And then we get into her background. She was born as a zodiac sign under the sign of the Deceivers, but it doesn't suit her at all because she's a terrible liar. She's rich and well educated by House Aktash. She's from Beaumont. Beaumont? I don't know how to pronounce it. You'd think I would know because I can name the place, but it's the capital dukedom of the kingdom. And so during character creation, I used a system called the knife theory, where you put a bunch of knives into your backstory so the GM can grab them and stab you with them as the story goes forward in the front story. And so the backstory that we came up with for her character was that she woke up one night, one morning, and all of her family had been murdered with some sort of bladed weapon. And she was blamed for the murder, and the secret and the mystery of this whole story is, why was she the only survivor of her entire family's murder? And there's going to be a detective from Amberfall in Beaumont looking into the death of her family, trying to pin the murder on her. And her character's objective in the campaign is going to be to find out the truth behind the death of her family. And that basically wraps up everything. I'm a little overshooting here. 13, 14 minutes. 15 minutes isn't that bad, I guess. Let me know in the comments below if you find this kind of thing interesting, if you would listen to more of these, and I will catch you guys later. Adios!